always feel a book themed tea is appropriate when filming a book video, and today I have on my I like to party, and by party I mean read books. Yes, I'm really short, so it's really hard to like get up there so you can see it, but you get the idea. Hello everyone, it is Sam and I hope you guys are having a fantastic day today. Today I'm here to share with you guys my April reading and statistics, so that's gonna be fun. I read a total of 5 books in the month of April, which ended up being a little bit more than I thought I was going to read because we got Zelda Breath of the Wild. So a lot of my time has been spent playing that game and coloring instead of reading because sometimes it's hard to fit in all of your hobbies, you know? There's only so much time in a day. Though I finished 5 books, I did start 2 other ones, so that's also not that bad. And I'm going to count those pages towards my reading total for April. So in the month of April, I ended up reading a total of 2,323 pages, which averages to about 77, 78 pages a day, so not bad at all for having been playing Zelda for most of the month. In terms of genre, all of the books that I read but one were fantasy. All of the ones I finished were fantasy, and then the one that I did not finish but started was a classic. In terms of format, my reading was actually almost evenly split between hardback and trade paperback. In terms of book length, I had a pretty good mixed bag of, length of books, anywhere from 200 to 700 pages. So either really big or really small. Yeah, it was just how I was rolling in April. In terms of years published, most of the books that I read were published in 2015 or later, but I did read 2 that were published in the 80s, and then the one classic I started, which of course was published in the 1800s. In terms of book status, as in where I acquired the book originally, 2 of them were actually gifted to me, and then the rest were ones that I purchased myself. In terms of star rating, it wasn't the best reading month for me. 3 of the books that I read were 3 stars, 1 was 3.5 stars, and 1 was 4 stars. So none of them were like outstanding superb books, but they were all ones that I still fairly enjoyed for the most part. So that kind of wraps up my statistics portion of the video, and I'm ready to share with you guys my thoughts and feelings on all of the books that I read. So the first book that I ended up finishing in April was A Court of Mist and Fury by Sarah J. Maas. This is the continuation of her series. I have no idea what it's called. I don't really know if the whole series is called The Court of Thorns and Roses. I'm terrible about researching this stuff, but we're gonna move on anyway. So this was one of the books nominated for the BookTube SFF Awards, so I had to read it, and of course last month I read the first book in the series because I needed to get to the second book. And I have such conflicting feelings about this series. The book 2, though a little bit better than A Court of Thorns and Roses, was not quite as amazing as people were making it sound like it was going to be. I kept being told that book 2 was gonna change how I view the series and it was gonna be fantastic. And though it was better and it did improve upon book 1, it still just wasn't amazing for me at all. I'm not going to get too much into the plot because it is a continuation of the story. It picks up exactly where book 1 left off, and it takes place, this one's more of a Hades Persephone retelling, and it takes place with some of the other characters that were introduced in the first book. So Rhysand and the Night Court and that particular part of the world. Though it was better for me than book 1. Some of the problematic issues that I had with book 1 in terms of the relationship between Feyre and the male characters was more explained in this book, though I still kind of have an issue with her relationship with the male characters. Rhysand was definitely better than Tamlin, but I don't know what it is about it. I don't even know if their relationship's necessarily problematic in the way that he treats her, or if I just hate her writing so much. But that was my other issue with these books, is Sarah J. Maas's writing. I cannot stand her writing, and I think the struggle I have with this series is that I actually kind of like the story. The story itself, the plot itself, I actually kind of like. I think it's a pretty solid story. The actual, where she's trying to take it, what she's trying to do with it, I think is fairly solid. But I think where it falls short for me is her writing. I think that if these series of books, if the story had been put into a more capable author's hands, such as Juliet Marillier, I think these had the potential to be amazing books, but I'm just not the biggest fan of her, Sarah J. Maas's writing, which if you guys liked it, I'm glad that other people like it. I think these books and her style of writing are just not for me, but part of me feels like these books really could have been edited more thoroughly. I think they could have been shorter, and her writing style, it baffles me. She uses so many em dashes or hyphens in her writing. Like on one page alone I counted 10, which just seems like an excessive use of em dashes, and I think it's something that really should have been caught by an editor, and I don't know if they're just trying to crank these books out and they're just not going through as thorough of an editing process, but I just feel like they're so overused. There was so many, and it was getting to the point where it was so distracting, it was pulling me out of the story, and it was just jarring. The other thing that was starting to get on my nerves was how many times she was referring to the guys in the book as the males. And I don't know why it bothered me so much, except for it just felt like not the right word almost. I recognize that they're not human, that they're supposed to be fae, but she just kept referring to all of the guys as males. The males are coming. The males are over there. The two males and the female. Like, it just didn't feel natural, and she kept using the term like so much, like kind of like the dashes. She just kept using them over and over again on the same page. So I think a lot of my issue with this book is her writing and her delivery, and her descriptions for me, they just don't work. They just feel a little over the top at times. I think what upsets me the most is that they really have the potential, the story itself has the potential to be good, but the characters and her writing just make it not good for me at all. So in terms of my rating breakdown for this book, I rated it as follows. I gave the story, the plot, 3.5 out of 5 stars because, like I said before, it really had a lot of potential, and I liked the story itself, just not necessarily the execution. I gave the characters 3 stars because I found a lot of the characters to be really annoying. I actually really like Farah's sisters a lot. I think they're probably some of my favorite characters, and we didn't get them that much in this book, so maybe you will in the later books if I do ever decide to continue on, which at this point I don't know. There's like so many other books I'd rather read, but I found a lot of the characters just kind of annoying in their personalities. The writing I would give 1.5 out of 5 stars. I just don't think that Sarah J. Maas is the best author. That I recognize that as a personal opinion. Her style of writing is definitely not for me at all, so I had to rate her writing for this book 1.5 out of 5 stars. I'll give the world building 3 stars. We definitely got a lot more world building in this book. We got a lot more description, which I really enjoyed. So I did like that we got more of a description of this world that this takes place in, the various courts and things like that. And we got to see other courts too, like the night court and the summer court and stuff. So that was pretty nice. The world building was definitely better in this book. So I ended up giving this an overall rating of 3 stars, 2.5, 3 stars. I kind of flip-flopped. I think I did enjoy the story. I enjoyed it while I was reading it, actually. Like, I found the story pretty engrossing, but there were just a lot of things that were really irritating me. So this is by no means the best written book on earth, but the story itself is actually fairly entertaining. So if you're looking for kind of a quick, fun, entertaining read, then this is definitely the book for you. So yeah, that is my thoughts and feelings on this book. They're very complicated thoughts and feelings, but moving on. The next book that I finished in April was In the Hands of the Goddess by Tamora Pierce. This is continuing my reread of all of Tamora Pierce's books that I'm hoping to do this year. This is a book 2 in the series and my least favorite in the quartet. Continues on pretty much exactly where the first one left off, but it's not really my favorite. Alana kind of frustrates me in this book. She's definitely more angsty than she is in the other books because she is a teenager. But I also don't really find the story to be the best, so it is definitely kind of setting it up for the next 2 books in the quartet. That much I remember. I also kind of forgot that some of Tamora Pierce's descriptions of people is actually a little bit problematic. Like these characters that very clearly are Asian culture influenced, she refers to as having yellow skin, things like that, which I was like, oh, that's not good. That's not good at all. She also kind of has a bastardization of Middle Eastern culture as well, which when I'm younger I didn't recognize it, but now being older I recognize definitely as being somewhat problematic. So that's something that definitely kind of knocked a star off of my rating of this book from what it used to be. So it's definitely not my favorite in the series, definitely has some issues, but I'm still enjoying my reread of her books. So this book I ended up rating 3 out of 5 stars. I would give the plot itself about 2.5 out of 5 stars. I would give the characters 3 stars because some of them are a little bit annoying in this book. And as well as I mentioned before, her description of some of these characters is kind of problematic. I would give the writing for this book 2.5 out of 5 stars. I really don't think this is Tamora Pierce's best work whatsoever, particularly in the way that she is describing the characters and some of the aspects of this world. And I would give the world building 2.5 out of 5 stars because she doesn't really expand upon the world in this book. There's really not a whole lot of description and what have you. So I definitely had to lower that rating as well. So I gave this book an overall rating of 3 out of 5 stars. Though I do still enjoy Tamora Pierce's works, I can definitely, now that I'm older, recognize some of the issues with it. And this one definitely is not one of my favorites. The next book that I finished was Furthermore by Tahereh and Mafi. This was another book for the BookTube SFF Awards in the middle grade category. The story is an Alice in the Wonderland retelling, and I should go into this letting you guys know that I do not like Alice in Wonderland at all. I've had to read excerpts from the original story, don't like it, don't like the movie, don't like any of the movie versions. I'm just not a fan of Alice in Wonderland. It creeped me out as a kid, and I think that's why I have such a block with this story, because I just have that like nagging, creepy feeling from when I was younger. So this book follows our main protagonist of Alice, and Alice is in a magical land that is full of a lot of magic and color and vibrancy, but Alice herself lacks color. Her skin, her hair, everything lacks color, and so she feels like an outcast in this world. She doesn't have the most loving mother, and her father took off several years ago, her father who she was very close with. So Alice is kind of in a time where she's definitely struggling. And soon she encounters the young boy of Oliver. Oliver was somebody who kind of tormented her in her younger years, but he has come back to ask for her help because he has been tasked with trying to find her father. So Alice and Oliver take off to the land of Furthermore to go and find her father. This land, of course, has its own rules and different kinds of magic, and it's very dangerous, but they set out together to reclaim her father and bring him back home. So for me, I wasn't the biggest fan of this book. I had a hard time with the characters of Alice and Oliver. I both found them to be very irritating and frustrating for different reasons, so I really struggled to connect with them because I just felt irritated with them for 90% of the novel. The story, the plot, I wasn't the biggest fan of either because, as I said, I don't really like Alice in Wonderland stories or the retellings, so that also was a struggle for me. And it just felt almost too whimsical, particularly in the way that Tahereh Mafi was writing the story. And her writing was very jarring because it was like this third-person narration, but she was also talking directly to the reader, like literally saying, "Dear reader, this is going to happen," or, you know, stuff like that. And for me, that writing style is very jarring. It will kind of pull me out of the story. So I kind of had a hard time getting immersed into the book itself. So I didn't find this to be the most enjoyable read. It's definitely a book geared towards more younger readers, and I think it's definitely a good book for them. It definitely teaches a lot of good morals, like accepting other people who are different from yourself, not just judging people based upon their appearance, but judging them based upon their actions and who they are as a person and not being prejudiced against people. And so it definitely has a lot of good moral things that it would teach, particularly for a younger audience. So I can definitely see a lot of the good things about this book, but the story itself just was not one for me. So my rating breakdown for this book is as follows. I'll give the story and the plot 3 stars. It was fairly well developed, even though I didn't like it because I don't like Alice in Wonderland stories, which again, that's a personal thing, so that's just me. For the characters, I would give them 2 out of 5 stars because I found them so frustrating and irritating through most of the book. The writing I would give 2.5 out of 5 stars. I don't think Tahereh Mafi's writing, I haven't read any other Tahereh Mafi books, so I can't really make that claim until I've read maybe the Shatter Me series at some point, but in this book itself, I just didn't find the writing to be the best. I found it to be almost a little too whimsical, which I never thought would be something I would say, but it just felt a little jarring and it would pull me out of the story itself. So for me, that's never a good thing. You want to stay engrossed in the story that you are reading. The next book I picked up was another Tamara Pierce read, and that was The Woman Who Rides Like a Man. This is the 4th book in the Song of the Lioness Quartet. I definitely like this one a lot more than the 2nd book. Again, this one takes up pretty much when book 2 leaves off. So we're continuing Alana's adventure. She's older, she's 18, she is now a knight, and she's continuing on her quest, removing herself from the court life to kind of basically find herself. I definitely like this one a lot more than the last one. There are still aspects of it that I found a little bit problematic for the same reason as I did with the last one in terms of how she describes some of the characters in the world and how it's similar to our own, but I definitely enjoyed it a lot more. Alana's not quite as angsty in this one. She's definitely trying to find herself, but the story itself I find to be a little bit more enjoyable than the last one. So for this one, I ended up rating it 4 out of 5 stars. I would give the plot for this one 4 stars. I would give the writing 3.5 out of 5 stars. It definitely improved in this book. I would give the characters 4 stars. Again, I found the characters to be much more enjoyable in this book. And I would give the world building 3.5 out of 5 stars. She definitely does a better job of describing where this book takes place and just the environment and all of that good stuff. For an overall rating of 3.5 out of 5 stars. So I'm hoping to get to the last book in the Song of the Lioness Quartet in May, and then I will be moving on to the Wild Magic Quartet, which was my favorite growing up. So I'm definitely looking forward to rereading those books. And the very last novel that I finished in the month of April was The Crooked Kingdom by Leigh Bardugo, which is a sequel to 6 of Crows. I have to say I really enjoyed this one a lot more than I did 6 of Crows. I was a little ambivalent about 6 of Crows. It wasn't my favorite book. I felt a little bit like she was trying to be a little bit too much like Eliza Block Lamora, but this one I definitely think came into its own and I enjoyed a lot more. I don't want to go too much into the plot because it definitely has a lot to do with the events that occurred in book 1, so I don't want to spoil people, but suffice it to say it picks up pretty much exactly where 6 of Crows ended, and there's like quite a bit of action that goes on in it, particularly in the first half of the book, and I really found myself enjoying it. Of course, it follows our motley band of thieves, as you will, and our ringleader being Kaz, and it follows the various character perspectives, but I found it to be really enjoyable. I really got into this one, had a lot of fun with it, which was quite nice after my kind of mediocre reading month. So I ended up giving this book an overall rating of 4 stars. I gave the story and the plot 4 stars. I enjoyed it a lot more than Six of Crows. I gave the characters 4 out of 5 stars. I really felt more connected with the characters, and I enjoyed a lot of their perspective, and I liked the relationship between Wylan and Jesper, and like a lot of that was just a lot of fun, and it was fantastic. I ended up giving her writing 4 out of 5 stars, and I gave the world building 4 out of 5 stars because we got to know a little bit more about the city, the various countries that are involved, and it was just a lot of fun. So this was definitely a nice fun read after all of the other kind of mediocre books I was reading in April. So I did pick up 2 more books in the month of April but did not finish them. The first one, of course, was The Barrow by Mark Smiley. I was looking forward to this book because it was another kind of thief book, but it kind of fell flat for me, and by page 80 I DNF'd it. I just found the book to be kind of boring, and I was having a really hard time getting into it, and I felt bad, so I was buddy reading it with Michael from Bitten by a Radioactive Book, but I just couldn't do it, so I ended up putting it down and moving on. We're gonna buddy read another book soon though to make up for it, but so that was a little bit disappointing. But I then picked up a classic that I've been meaning to get to for a while, and that was Count of Monte Cristo by Alexandre Dumas. I got about 100 pages into it, and I'm enjoying it immensely. I'm kind of reading this between some of the other books I need to read, so kind of reading a few pages here and there in the evenings. So I expect this to take me a month or 2 to read since I'm taking it fairly slower, but it's nice to be back reading a classic. I of course love reading classic literature, but I haven't been reading as much lately, so I was hoping to rectify it with this book, and I think I chose a good one. I'm enjoying it a lot so far, which is quite nice. Alright guys, that is it for my April reading wrap up. I feel like this is going to be a long video, so if you've made it all the way to the end, thank you and congrats. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and again, if you guys liked any of these books I didn't much care for, I'm glad that you guys enjoy them. They're just not for me, and I just don't want to upset anybody. You guys can like whatever books you like. I personally just don't always care for them. Alright guys, that is it for today's video. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you guys all have a lovely month of May. Until next time, happy reading. Bye.